Good evening and welcome to the Capital Market. I'm Edidiong Iwang. Well, a very interesting trading week ended on Friday in spite of the heavy hitting news headlines from the bigger economy. Now on Market Street, these are some of the items in the news. While the International Organization of Securities Commissions is preparing to launch its third annual World Investor Week from Monday, September the 30th to the 6th of October, the World Investor Week, which aims to promote investor education and protection, will also highlight the various initiatives of securities regulators around the world. This includes key messages regarding online investing, digital assets, and initial coin offerings, as well as re-emphasizing the basics of investing. According to the Acting Director General of Nigeria Securities and Exchange Commission, Mary Udruk, the SEC is determined to ensure capital market investors are adequately protected in all transactions. Well, the shares of Great Nigeria Insurance PLC have been admitted to trade on the NASD OTC Securities Exchange. Now, according to the NASD Exchange, shareholders of the insurance firm can commence its dematerialization of their shares of Great Nigeria Insurance through Greenwich Registries Limited and Data Solutions Limited. Well, GT Bank, one of Nigeria's Tier 1 lenders, has notified the Nigerian Stock Exchange that the board of directors of the bank is scheduled to consider the unaudited financial statements for the third quarter of the 16th of October. Now, GT Bank's third quarter reporting period ends 30th of September. Well, Continental Reinsurance PLC on Friday published a notice of a court-ordered meeting scheduled for October the 29th to consider a scheme of arrangement in relation to the fully paid-up ordinary shares of the company. The special meeting is part of plans by Continental Re Nigeria to sell Nigeria's shares to Continental Re Africa Investments Limited. One Continental Re Nigeria PLC share will be bought at 2 Naira 50 kobo for each Continental Re Africa Investments Limited. The chairman of Nigeria's Investment and Securities Tribunal, Isiaka Idoko, was removed on Friday by President Buhari. Idoko's removal was contained in a circular issued by the permanent secretary in charge of the Ministry of Finance, Dr. Mahmood Issa Dutse. The ISC chairman has been asked to hand over to Mr. Uduni, a full-time member of the tribunal, who was also appointed the acting chairman of the Securities Tribunal. Now moving to the market, sentiment remained weak at the Nigerian equities market as the all-share index closed marginally lower by 0.01% week-on-week following sell-offs of bellwether stocks, including MTN Nigeria and Dangote Cement. The month-to-date and year-to-date return of the market moderated to 0.5% and 11.9% respectively. Now, analyzing by sectors, the oil and gas, consumer goods and insurance indices recorded gains, while the industrial goods and banking indices closed in the red. Over the coming week, analysts expect the market to remain pressured given global risk-off sentiment and weak domestic participation. Nonetheless, valuations remain attractive, while price deterioration has resulted in expected dividend yields on some stocks rising significantly to levels on par. Now moving to the unlisted securities markets, the NASD market also closed on Friday positive by 0.14%, standing at 705.14. Now the market cap is higher as 506.60 billion naira. In terms of volume and value, we see that 541,819 shares worth 146.83 million naira were traded in 14 deals. Now moving over to the fixed income side of it, the bond market finished positive on Friday as average yield closed lower by 5 basis points across the curve. Now average yield declined to 14.07% from 14.12%. In all, a total of 30 deals worth 8.45 billion naira were traded. Now on the treasury side of it, the treasuries market also ended the week positive with buying interest weakness across the yield curve. Average yield declined by 17 basis points to 13.33% from 13.50% on Thursday. A total of 437 deals worth 222.28 billion naira were traded. Now, away from the markets, the Chief Executive Officer of NASD OTC Securities Exchange, Bola Ajomale, says the exchange is planning the adoption of blockchain technology as a strategy that will help investors in the Nigerian capital markets. Ajomale was speaking on Friday at an interactive presentation with market traders. Let's take a listen.
The whole idea behind our meeting today is for us to take some time out from our busy schedules to look at this tiny market that we have and say, imagine. And then look at where we are so far. And we had some challenges, some questions that challenge us to say, why are you not doing this? Why are you not here? Why are you not there? We had some questions on your machinery and your platform. Why is it in this manner? What can you do to do this? We had some challenges on how far can you go in one direction or another. Well, continuing with our theme of imagine if we as a market now start saying our participants should come into the market and buy tokens to allow them to trade. Or imagine if, instead of paying dividends to our shareholders, who essentially are you, the gentlemen and ladies in the room who are members of the capital market, instead of paying a dividend at the end of the year, you actually get a reward for every trade that you do. Imagine. And then everything in terms of our share capital, in terms of our funding, is tokenized. Imagine, you'll be getting a token back for every single transaction that you bring into NEST. Already, that changes the scenario, changes the picture of our relationship. Imagine, we're still imagining. Let me go one step further. Let me go one step further and say, imagine that for every infraction, we deduct some of the tokens that you have as. It makes regulation so much easier because you know that the penalty is without your ability to do anything about it. Imagine, there's so many things that we can start imagining that we can do with this market and grow it. Now, again, imagine that a small company that wants to raise a small amount in dollars to be able to pay to buy whatever it wants to buy abroad. Imagine if it can raise it in the form of coins and can trade those on NEST. That means already we're trading a foreign kind of denominated currency without us going through exchange risks and so on. And that company too is hedged from that kind of exchange risk. Of course, it makes it easier for companies to grow. We mentioned NASDAQ, and one of the first things that Enterprise Development Center asked us, the development arm of LBS, one of the first things that they asked us was, so can you cater to our people in Kenya, Uganda, and so on? And we said, well, with the right technology, we can. Well, this is part of the technology that will probably enable us to start servicing people internationally very quickly. You can upskill fast. I like the question about obsolescence because disruption, I mean, people are always worried about disruption. I don't think there are too many people who use secretaries who they do dictation for, where they dictate and somebody writes it down in shorthand and then takes it to a what's that thing called? I don't even know the name anymore. A typewriter, and types it in and then brings it back to a guy and he goes through it again and they go back again. I don't think we do that anymore. At least if you do, you're very resilient. You're very resilient. Because what has happened is you got Microsoft Word that just checks it and you do it yourself on the fly while you're in traffic or whatever. Even you can do it on your phone and send that and say, send. So it allows you to do a lot more, a lot faster, if only you are prepared to embrace it. What we are signaling to our community, to you, is that we are preparing to take another step and go in a totally different direction. So this is our first signal towards that effect. You'll be hearing more about what we intend to do as time goes on. But I believe that there's so much that we can do that, again, with this start, I know that people will start throwing ideas at us and will be saying, imagine, I've got a partner here, I just looked at him, and I've got a partner here who is taking us in a totally different direction right now. By I don't know, I guess early next year, we shall be coming up with something quite interesting to do with the custodial space, to do with the issuance space as well. That said, this is one and the first in what I would say is a series. We attached this to CIS, or CIS was very happy to support us in this. I would note that it is I just checked the records now, and only 28 members of the Institute actually came to take advantage of this. I think you should encourage your colleagues a lot more to acquire more information. Otherwise, that obsolescence is going to be a certainty in their profession. They'll be left trading paper, which really the world is moving very quickly away from. Going back to that issue as well, there's a limit to how far you can cover without your website. With the onset of the website, your coverage is now instantly in the hands of anybody you want to get in touch with. That is what this technology and oncoming technology is going to do. It's going to empower us to do a lot more. CIS members, I would encourage more attendance at events like this. I think there's a lot for us to learn. This really was not supposed to tell you everything. It's just supposed to get the ball rolling and get us started. And for us to signal as well that we're very interested in this field as well.
Well, that's Bola Ajamale, the CEO at NASD OTC Securities. Well, at that same interactive session, a consultant to the OTC exchange, Eniton Odogun, explains the technicalities of blockchain technology that the exchange plans to adopt, also outlining the latest reforms ahead of its adoption next year.
Imagine a world where CAC had an electronic record. I think they have that nowadays. But imagine a world where CAC had an electronic record of all the companies in Nigeria, who owns what, and where all the shareholder data that you need sitting on a blockchain. And then instead of us having to create CSCS to dematerialize shares and all of that, CSCS plugged into that share registry and just pull the data of the companies that wanted to list. I mean, it's the same data, right? It's the same data. You didn't even have to issue share certificates in the first place to people who bought. You just needed to notify CAC that XYZ people had bought, and they updated the records. And then when it was time to list, CSCS just plugged into that database. And then when it was time to trade, the exchange also plugged into that database. That would significantly reduce the cost and time. And even the paperwork, there would be no paperwork in the first place. And potentially it will reduce the number of intermediaries and participants in the market. So it's a very different way of looking at how the market can work. If you have that share registry that we've just described, from application for listing to actual trading could take a matter of hours if everyone is in agreement and understands how the process works. And then you have decentralized custody. So how it works, everyone, like I said, it's decentralized. You have total ownership and total control of your crypto assets. So there's no bank holding your crypto assets for you. All you have is something called a crypto wallet. Your crypto wallet has two legs to it. There's the public key and then there's the private key. The private key is known only to you. Even the software which you use to create your crypto wallet cannot retrieve your private key for you. So it's all yours. So you don't need a custodian or a third party to hold your crypto assets for you. However, the downside to that is once you misplace your private key, it's gone forever. So what are the limitations and some brief proposed solutions? So first, like I mentioned, scalability is very difficult to scale with proof of work. It's extremely difficult. So if we are processing 2,000 transactions per minute now, the technology on ground doesn't let us, the mechanisms on ground don't let us move from 2,000 transactions to 6,000 transactions. Just to put it into context, you want to replace money. MasterCard and Visa are processing hundreds of thousands of transactions per second. And the different blockchains, all of them put together, aren't processing up to 100,000 per second. And you want to replace money. That's not going to work. Standardization. There are a lot of blockchains out there, and they're not interoperable. So if I find myself using this blockchain and using services on this blockchain, that is where it sits. So anyone with a different blockchain, I can't do anything anywhere else. So
as the third quarter formally ends on Monday, let's discuss the outlook for the market in the final quarter of the year. Joining to chat to this is Channel's business editor, Bosino Mafai. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
Can you give us a quick outlook, for the markets year to date?
I think we've done fairly well. It's been a highly political environment for the year. Remember the elections and all the intrigues around the elections. It was a peaceful elections, but again, the outlook on whether the cabinet will come in on time and all of that, that took a bit away from our first quarter, second quarter. But again, if you look at the global space, the rhetorics around the trade war between the US and China took a lot of attention away from the equities market. So investors largely played more of the fixed income market, treasury bills and bonds for the early part of the year. Our anticipation again, as we got MTN and Airtel listing around April, May, and June, that sort of gave investors in the equity space a bit of some confidence as to where we're going. But again, there was so much of this political overhang in terms of where is the cabinet, what will be the nature of the cabinet. The executive branch was largely silent. So to a large extent, folks were largely waiting. What will be the nature of the cabinet and all of that. Now we'd half year. There was no cabinet in place. Then folks were asking the question, what's going on at the fiscal space? Meantime, the central bank was trying to wrap its head around using monetary policy tools to deal with whether it is palm oil or it is imported milk or it's going to be about giving more loans to SMEs and what have you. And all of that kept the markets on edge. And the central bank kept trying to do some of what the fiscal authorities should be doing. Then we get into July, August, then we have a cabinet in place. And everybody took a bit of a breather. So if you look at the stock market or the equity side, you've seen a bit of a better sentiment since we had a cabinet in place. There's more clarity on the political space that we have a cabinet and we know who these gentlemen are and women and who will be coming in and who will be going. Some critical ministers retain their portfolio, like works, finance, and aviation, which is critical to road, rail, the Belt and Road Initiative that the Nigerian authorities are doing. So that's largely what it was. Then again, the calendar from the debt management office in terms of borrowings via debt was okay. The head of the debt management office made it clear Nigeria will not be doing any Eurobond this year. We'll just do a multilateral borrowing, and we're discussing $2.5 billion with the World Bank. On the side of the central bank is trying to maintain liquidity, try to rein in inflation, and we've seen a bit of a result of that over a 3-month period, July and August. Yeah. So we hope that all this will continue, and all of these are all in attempt to see that, look, we have a bit of a soft landing at the end of the year.
Okay, so with all of this in place and all that we've seen, in the economy from the first, second, and third quarter, what is your outlook for the fourth quarter?
I think as a business journalist, and I think my outlook is that we're getting into the period when folks will start taking some profit. But again, we're not ruling out the fact that you can still see a major rebound, investors very sentiment strong in October and November before folks start selling down and wrapping up for the year. So, but again, you need to look at what will be the headline news and what to focus on. The last MPC for the year will be critical. The central bank governor has indicated, however, in an interview with Bloomberg earlier this week, there will be no interest rate cut until inflation gets down to 9%. So we can kiss that goodbye for the rest of the year. But what will be the sentiment of the MPC when they meet finally for the year? Will there be some statements that the central bank will make without touching the monetary policy rate? That will be very key. What will be the rest of the calendar for the debt management office in terms of the borrowings from both locally and internationally? We'll be on the lookout for that as well. In particular, again, for investors will be the earnings. You said earlier on the show that GT Bank gave notice that the board of directors will meet later in October to consider third quarter numbers. As soon as those numbers start coming in, investors will price in those earnings. And if they look good for the banks, consumer goods, industrial goods, maybe the insurance and oil and gas, then we could say, and of course MTN and Airtel, by the way. If those numbers come in good, Dangote Cement, maybe Lafarge and others, then we can say, oh, fine, it's been nice. Investors will price those good earnings, which is 9 months into the numbers. And that could give the equity side a bit of a decent finishing for the year. Not that we're likely going to make a fantastic ending, but we'll just finish off very nicely. On the debt side, the new yield curve, like you put it, it looks like that's the new reality, between 13.5, 14%. We're likely going to end the year around that corridor until we have more clarity on budget 2020, which will be very, very critical for those who are traders and dealers in the debt market.
Okay, thank you, Bosun. So you've given us your outlook for the fourth quarter.
That looks a bit of my
So
playbook.
talking about next week now, what do you see happening, in the financial space, in the markets next week?
Next week is Independence Day will be in everybody's crosshairs from, as usual, we love our holidays. So expect Monday folks to close a little bit early, try to enjoy a bit of the Tuesday, then come back to work on Wednesday. Of course, it's going to be very busy. You find the cabinet meeting will be on Wednesday. We expect that to happen. President Buhari will be back in office on Monday. And by Wednesday, we'll be sitting with the cabinet. Everyone will want to know what he's back with from the UN General Assembly and how do we move forward on that. There'll be issues around the ease of doing business, the ranking we got on Friday. Will there be a talking point on that as well? What will be the 411? But again, a few issues the market would have to deal with. The removal of the IST Securities Tribunal chairman and an appointment of new one. I'm sure the traders and dealers on Monday will start wrapping their head on what actually happened to Isiaka Idoko. Why was he removed from office? Of course, the government provides a continuity, so there's no lacuna, as it were. But there are a lot of cases pending before the Investment and Securities Tribunal, which needs adjudication and resolution. So, but continuity is also already there. So I'm sure everyone will move on that in the story. But the clarity with MTF, with the FSP, and the budget 2020 will be something everybody on the market street would want to have more clarity about, especially from the National Assembly. The executive has thrown the gauntlet there. We'll see what happens at the National Assembly as per the discussions around MTF and the fiscal strategy paper.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bosun, for sharing your thoughts with us on
My
the show
pleasure.
today.
Thank you.
So, well, thank you for joining us on the program. That's it for today. See you next week. I'm Edidiong Iwang.